see all of you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having your video off. New faces. Rosie's mom, welcome.
Hi, Chat Chat. Good morning, Jeff. It's good to see you again. Hi, Courtney. Hi, Debbie.
Oh, you
So
you
happy you can be here.
you connected with Jeff. That's right.
Yes, he came to the
Yes.
encyclical and sip. That was cool. Hi, Kate. Thanks for being here in the middle of the night over there in Australia.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
have to apologize for Rosie because I found myself at that meeting not remembering how I was referred to that meeting, and then Rosie had to rescue me.
It was perfect. It gave a moment of humor.
Love that. See, we all connect in such different ways. Marie, hello. Simone, welcome.
Right. Hi, Maxine. Welcome.
Thanks. Good morning.
Hi, Jenny. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning. All right. Well, we'll just jump right in. Welcome everybody who is new to our group. We meet every month and we talk about anything related to flourishing. Human Flourishing at Work is the name of our network. And the original founder of this group is the one and only Marie Gill. As you can see, she's in the middle of my screen.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Marie.
You're looking fancy today, Marie.
I had to flourish and move my office to the deck, and this we face east, and I'm just literally like blinded right now. So if I'm like doing this, I'm not being rude. I'm just like trying to
No,
see you.
I'm so happy for you that you're on your deck. So we have Rosie von Lila here today. So she and I met through a friend who I met at the Flourishing Summit. And so Rosie and I were able to meet in person a couple weeks ago in Manhattan, which was amazing. And I told her this story. I'm from Minnesota. On my flight to New York, I watched The Devil Wears Prada. And I very much identified with like the frumpy girl going to New York City. And when I met Rosie, she was about the fanciest person I think I've ever met, including white gloves. So it was like I had to laugh, and I told her that I had to laugh. Like I'm like the frumpy girl from Minnesota, and Rosie's so lovely and put together, and it was a contrast. So she's doing really cool, important work in the realm of flourishing. So am loving to welcome her today. I'm going to read her bio and then I'll turn it over to Rosie. So, Rosie von Lila's métier is human flourishing. A multidisciplinary creative, Rosie uses arts and technologies to bring people together around flourishing and what academic research teaches us on the subject. Seeking to practice and grow her own flourishing, Rosie co-authored the Practical Flourishing Assessment, TPFA, has been used by law enforcement professionals, including the New York Police Department, first responders across the U.S., military veterans, and executive leaders of multi-billion-dollar enterprises. Von Lila Creative conducted a research study of 84 participants who used TPFA monthly for 90 days from 2025 to 2026. New York University's Initiative on Purpose and Flourishing collected the data and evaluated the program outcomes, finding the following. TPFA produces measurable shifts in how participants understand and engage with their own lives. The most significant changes occur in internal locus of control, resilience after failure, and confidence in achieving goals. These shifts are not extreme, but they are consistent and meaningful, with several measures showing improvements of over 10 percentage points. Importantly, these changes align closely with the development of learned optimism. Participants become more likely to interpret outcomes as influenced by their own actions, persist through setbacks, and expect effort to produce results. This represents not just a shift in belief, but a shift in behavior. Participants move from knowing what flourishing entails to actively practicing it. She's an experienced community convener and founded Floris, the adventure club for people who are into flourishing. Rosie was featured in Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel's bestseller, Stealing Fire, How Silicon Valley, the Navy SEALs, and Maverick Scientists Are Revolutionizing the Way We Live and Work. Stephen Kotler is the flow guy. So I'm very excited to see how Rosie is going to integrate art into flourishing, and she even managed to use a hockey quote in her intro. So I'm so curious to see how this is all going to play out. And I'm particularly curious about the practical things that your group has been doing with florists. So, Rosie, I'll turn it over to you. And normally, for those of us who are new, we do a little like 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40 minutes presentation. I'll keep an eye on the chat if people have questions. Rosie will generally hold them to the end, but if you're okay, if we can pop in if there's a relevant question at the time.
Yep. And I'll monitor the chat as well. Yeah,
Okay.
please, by all means, add questions. I love to hear what you're thinking, what you're curious about. Pop them in the chat and we'll chat about them. Good
Excellent.
morning, everyone. And thank you, Karen, for that wonderful introduction and for inviting me to speak today. This is, I'm really pleased to be here. And thank you for your attention and for your time and the opportunity to share my creative works with you. And if you take away from this session one molecule of inspiration toward your own creativity in your own flourishing, then I will have done my job today. And then I can take myself out to a nice lunch. So I want to share first how I came to human flourishing because it is unconventional, like most of my life. So in 2020, I had been working in finance going on about 8 years. And it was time for a career change. And it was sort of a planned thing, but then COVID happened and it forced the issue. And so I really believe in this maxim that every human being has at least one book inside of them. So I'd been thinking about topics of what I could write on. And I had these 3 ideas, and I called my friend Danny Levin, who had worked in publishing and had a very successful career in publishing. And he had made many authors into household names. So I said, Danny, I have these 3 ideas. And then words came out of my mouth that I had never spoken before, that I had never been aware of. I said, but Danny, what connects these ideas is human flourishing. And Danny screamed at me through Zoom. And he said, that's what your book is about. And I, being a practical person, the next question out of my mouth was, how do I write that? And he said, you have to ask human flourishing what it wants to say. And this is ultra woo. And so I finished the Zoom call. I opened up a Word document. I literally typed that question, human flourishing, what would you like to say? And I did that for 5 months. And after 5 months, I had written 30,000 words. And it turns out that there was a lot to come through based on my experience, having worked with the Global Arts Organization, having been a community builder, being a creative, and living a very purposeful life. And I realized on day 3 of human flourishing, what would you like to say? That if I was going to have anything to say about human flourishing, that if I was going to be a voice for human flourishing, that I had to practice my own flourishing. So that was 6 years ago. And along the journey, it has been the greatest pleasure of my life to come to know the world of flourishing, the history of flourishing, the academic field of flourishing, and to be able to bring creativity as a storyteller and as an artist to help carry the message of flourishing out into the world. So what I'm about to show you is my body of work to date, as some samples from it. I do want to say my favorite form of art is watercolor painting. I paint portraits of my dog. This is Cassius Clay. She's a 7-pound Chihuahua. I do things like photograph her feet and then paint them. And I'm now starting to incorporate these artworks into some of my products. So I've had these for years. I designed these bags. They're little carry-all bags. It's a zipper pouch. And on the front is a message. It says flourishing is a practice. And I make little smaller ones too. And so now I'm putting Cassius on there with another one of my messages of flourishing. And so it is so cool to have my creativity fuse with my life's work, which is to be a voice for flourishing. So I'm pretty sure that this is the first ever show and tell session here at the Flourishing at Work group. So I hope this is fun for you. Pop your questions in the chat box as we go along. And I'm going to share the screen now. Okay, can you see this? It says art that communicates flourishing. Yes, give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right, here we go. So this is a little comic strip that I made. I told you watercoloring is my preferred method. When it comes to drawing, I draw stick figures. Okay, so I created this little comic strip as a way to explain what resilience is. So someone hits you smack dab between the eyes, you're upset, you're sweating, your pulse is racing. Now you're freaked out and you're dysregulated. On your journey of flourishing, you will discover what the tools are that help you to become present, slow your breath, slow your pulse rate, and have a clear mind again. And that's this process of downregulation. So maybe that's taking a walk, or maybe it's closing your eyes and praying, maybe it's meditating, maybe it's writing a letter, whatever that is for you. And then as soon as your system is back to center again, you can carry on with your life. This next comic is a little comic strip. There we go. All right. So here we are. We're at someone's house. We all know this awful sound, the chirping of the smoke detector. Okay. The battery is low. The dude's just sitting there. That has certainly been me at some points. Like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this. His friend comes along. Hey, what's going on? He's like, I'm just working. And then his friend hears this, and it's quite dismaying for him because it's an awful sound. But this dude is just hanging out. His friend then says, you know, that's easy to change, right? Like his friend's pointing out the obvious thing. I called the manager. So he's calling somebody else to take care of it. And his friend says, but you don't have to live like this. You can change this yourself. And he's like, yeah, no. My next comic strip is going to be called Codependency. And it's going to feature this guy right here coming in and rescuing everybody else. I make video artworks, and I like to shoot videos in our home here. When people come to visit our home, they ask if we are set designers and if we shoot things here. The answer is I do set design for my videos. I have a brand new YouTube channel. We are producing content. We have a lot in the can, and we're in the process of editing it now, but it's all videos about human flourishing. I have a whopping 47 followers on YouTube and 2 videos. If you would like to be my 48th, 49th, and 50th follower on there, please subscribe. It's YouTube at Human Flourishing. That is the handle. So I seek to make education about deep, hard, meaningful, flourishing related topics, make it entertaining and relatable. So in this particular video, why am I having a Mad Hatter's Tea Party? It's because I'm spilling a tea. And in this particular, this is one of 2 videos. The first video is about shame, and the second video is about suicide. And so I explore these deep topics and talk about how they inhibit flourishing. And I talk about personal experience, and the first time that I heard about suicide, I was, I think, 13. My school friend's brother had killed himself. He was only 16. And so like telling stories about life that knowing that this subject impacts so many people. So that's the kind of material that we're looking to cover on the Human Flourishing channel. And then we also do really fun, entertaining things like this little 40-second clip I'm going to show you.
What is human flourishing? Human flourishing isn't that life is great all the time. No one's life is 100% perfect for any sustained period because life is always changing. Life's great, and then you lose your job, or your parent gets diagnosed with cancer, or you get sick, or your car gets totaled. Life happens. We all face loss and sometimes betrayal and sometimes empty pockets. Flourishing is about 3 things: taking aligned action so that your life works for you, developing healthy coping skills to navigate adversity, every day practicing being your best. Flourishing is a practice, and a practice means doing a little something each day. Each day, do something for your flourishing.
That's the type of video work that we're creating. This project here is, as I mentioned in the session description, it's a very pithy title, the world's first illustrated timeline on the history of human flourishing. This is my prototype. I made this several years ago. It has just a little smattering of academics in flourishing, and then it's missing about 2,000 years here. And then we've got some ancient Greeks sipping espresso. Now, since I started this, so the goal is to have this timeline that covers at least 5,000 years of history. And I'm going to show you the progress that we've been making on this. on this prototype, I want to assure you, the final timeline is not going to be just men and not just Western men. We actually cover a lot of ground. These are my original drawings. Told you watercolor is my preferred choice, but I'm having a great time making illustrations of these different people who were philosophical thinkers and created works that have survived across time. The ways that we're thinking about who's included on the timeline are we're looking at region, we're looking at period, and we're also looking at nations, if you will. Currently on the timeline, we've selected 189 points. And as you can see, it starts way over here. I'm going to give you a zoom in just a minute. This is ancient Mesopotamia. And then I love seeing this visual of how it hockey sticks over here. Karen, do you see what I did there? So one of the things that we're going to do is analysis on this, on looking at the different factors that are causing this huge uptick in flourishing. I find this so inspiring for humanity. This is such an incredible time to be alive. In a period where there's such dislocation, it's a loosening up of the way that things have been, and it's a catalyst. The invitation here is for people to do the work on themselves and in community such that they have the resilience to be able to navigate major challenges such as AI. And one of the great things that I heard recently, one of the very inspiring things that was deeply meaningful to me, I have been saying the human flourishing, there's a few things that it is at its essence. Number one is to flourish, it represents the expansion of consciousness. It's expansion of consciousness. And through that, as an individual, if I'm expanding my consciousness, I'm gaining wisdom along the way through the experience of my life. And as I'm gaining wisdom, I'm maturing. So there's a man named Tristan Harris. He's a co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology. He's one of the leading voices out there talking about the impacts of artificial intelligence, what's coming down the pipe. And I heard him say the other day, we as humanity can navigate this, but it's going to require us being our most mature selves. It requires us as humanity to mature. Enter the human flourishing movement. So what we have here on the timeline, zoom in, you're only going to be able to see the little color blocks here for the moment. Over here, so we have ancient Mesopotamia, then we get into Hebrew Jewish thinkers and leaders. Here we have Asian and Indus Valley. We get into Indian subcontinent. This green are the Greeks, Romans. Here is where Jesus of Nazareth is born. Actually, it's a little bit later. These are all Christian thinkers in the purple. We start to get modern psychology here. And then here is where we come into today's time. And you can see how many people are thinking and writing about human flourishing at this point. So this is what the timeline looks like in 1/4 scale. I printed this out. And by the way, what I'm showing you is a work in progress. What this will eventually look like are illustrations like that original prototype I showed you. It's going to have illustrations with a chunk of information about that thinker or that period in time. This printout, it's 1/4 size, it's 44 feet long. And when we have it to be full size, it'll be more than 100 feet long. So what it looks like, okay, can you see this? Can you see instructions of Shrupak? Yes, okay, fantastic. So these are the timeline points that we currently have selected. I do want to say it's a draft. So this is not set in stone yet. We scroll forward here. So we get into ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, scroll along. We have the Buddhists, we have the Hebrews, get into East Asia. Here comes classical Roman. And so what I love about this is being able to see what different parts of the world we're thinking about at different times in terms of how to live a good life and what is wisdom and how do we live together. So that is where that is heading. Okay. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks for following. Appreciate it. All right. So any questions on the timeline before we go into measuring flourishing? No? Okay, fantastic. Onward we go. So it's, as I mentioned, an exciting time to be alive. We have this happening right now, the Global Flourishing Study, which is in year 4 of measurement, 5-year longitudinal study following 200,000 people in 20 countries. Largest ever human flourishing study. Like that, it's just like undeniably large. Undeniable, like the data sets that are coming out of this will be irrefutable in terms of looking at what does flourishing entail in different cultures and for different people in different locations in the world. By the way, as a creative, this branding speaks to my soul. The colors they chose, it's so tasty. Okay, so Karen mentioned about the practical flourishing assessment. Back, gosh, I was probably at least 7 or 8 months into asking human flourishing, what would you like to say? And I then discovered the academic field of flourishing, and that there is an academic field and that it's vast and there's lots of people working in it. And so I searched, I looked for measures that were specifically for human flourishing. And so where that took me was to Ed Diener's flourishing scale. It took me to Martin Seligman's PERMA model, and it took me to Tyler Vanderweel's flourishing measure. So I did all of these. I did these 2, and I did many of Seligman's assessments, and I did them multiple times. And every time I got a score. But for someone who's not an academic, right, academic measures are fantastic for quantifying people and making it easy to organize them into data sets. But for me, as someone who wanted to practice her flourishing, that wasn't useful to me. So what then happened, this is my partner, David. He and I, for ourselves, started building a tool. We called it the Family Flourishing Session. And we made it just for us. We did it as a couple. We did it for a year. And we're both quite extroverted and we have the gift of gab. And so we told our friends. And then the following year, they wanted to try it. And so we did it online with them, and we literally showed them, okay, here's how you draw this part, and you're going to write these lines, and you're going to write this here. They did it manually. And that had me realize, well, we're going to need a designed document if people want to use this. The next year, I got invited to do a workshop at NYPD with my one-pager that I had designed. And toward the end of the year, we were invited, we were booked to go and present to a military agency that's run by the Navy and the Army. So at the beginning of last year in January, we went and did that pitch. And what they said was, this looks really interesting, but we need to see data to back it. It does look like this would increase resilience, but we need to see data. So fortunately, just 2 weeks after that, I already had a meeting booked with the associate director at the NYU Initiative on Purpose and Flourishing. And when we met, I shared with him that we needed to do some research. So what came out of that was Von Lila Creative ran a study. We did it over the course of 6 months. The number of people who completed were 84 people. Those 84 people used our assessment over the course of 90 days. NYU collected all of the data and analyzed it. We didn't have anything to do with the data or the analysis. And so they evaluated our program. That year, we also did a pilot study with students at Columbia University to have them test it out. Here we are now in year 5, and where we're heading with this is we have people who are asking to bring the practical flourishing assessment into their professional practices. So it's coaches, psychiatrists, and psychologists. And we know from working from our conversations with the military and law enforcement that they're interested in having a program that we can bring into their enterprises and institutions. So we are rolling that out later this year. And then when we finished the research study, we had participants, research participants who said, hey, we want to keep using this tool. How do we do that? And so we launched a community membership called Floris. So we meet once a month online. We guide everybody through the practical flourishing assessment. And then every few months, we create opportunities to get together in person. This is what the cover of the practical flourishing assessment looks like. I did all the design work on the book, did the layout, all of that. So it's another creative artistic project for me. This is an example of what a florist experience can look like. We do a lot of walks. We go on adventures. It's all about adventures. Love adventures. So where is the puck heading, to continue the hockey metaphor? All right. So the Vatican is deeply involved with human flourishing. They have been hosting Humanity 2.0. People from all over the world are involved in this and going to the convenings that are happening there. We're starting to see, so 2 years ago, when I was speaking about flourishing, many people thought that I had invented that word. And I said, no, it's been around for thousands of years. And this is why human beings exist, is to flourish. And so lots of people are interested in this. We're part of a big lineage. And I was saying 2 years ago, said in the next 18 to 24 months, you're going to see the words human flourishing everywhere. You're going to see it on magazine covers, newspaper articles. You're going to hear it on television. And so here's an example of an article that was from 6 months ago in Forbes. And this summit is happening in Georgia in September. I'm planning on going to this. And Karen, if we'd like to organize a delegation, I'm happy to be part of that. But we're seeing more and more people wanting to convene around this topic of flourishing. So where the puck is heading is we're going to see more and more storytellers and academics brought together, because this seemingly, I don't even want to say dry, it's a very academic term, human flourishing, but when people hear it, 9 out of 10 times they say to me, I don't know what that is, but I like how that sounds. They like the sound of it. And so we're going to see a movement of getting the word out about human flourishing, as I like to say, of getting it into every home in America. And from there, it goes around the world. Maybe it pops into every home in another country first, but since I live here, that's what I want to focus on. I want to get this into every home in America so that every human being has at least heard of this concept. And the way that I frame it is, as a living being, you exist to flourish before you die. That is what your DNA programs you to do. And it's your choice to opt in, to discover what that means for you. So as a creative, I'm biased, but it's also true. As a human being, you are inherently creative. You are here to make things, whether that's a family or entrepreneurship or a painting of your dog. You're here to be inherently creative. And that's part of the adventure of flourishing. It's your choice to discover what your flourishing is for you. And my word of advice, of unsolicited advice, is make things that have you grow. Flourishing, again, is about the expansion of consciousness, the growth of consciousness. And by choosing things that have you grow, you inevitably contribute to the world. So my greatest hope for today is that you've found one molecule of inspiration for your own creativity and your own journey of flourishing. Here's my contact information. My slogan that's now going on my bags with the dog is "Here to Flourish." I'm going to be painting a French bulldog. I'm taking requests for dogs because I'm going to do a dog series. So if you have a popular dog, let me know. If you send me a portrait, I'll put them on one of my bags. The floor is open.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
I would like to just put a +1 on the last part of, like, our purpose of flourishing is so we can contribute to something beyond ourselves. So love that you highlighted that. There was one question in the chat from Simone. Does the assessment rely on self-reporting?
Yes, excellent question, Simone. So the assessment, unlike academic measures, the whole purpose is the process of looking at your life. We do use a scoring system. Let me get a copy. So we take you through this process and you end up with a wheel that represents your last month and your current state. We're looking at your recent experience compared with your aspirations. So you're not measuring your life overall. You're measuring it based on what happened in the last month and where you'd like to go. And what the tool does, we always say it's not about the score. A 10 represents I'm fully satisfied in this part of my life right now. A 0 represents this is completely lacking for me right now. And so from month to month, I went on one particular area, I went from a 2 one month to an 8. Huge swing. Why? Because when I scored myself a 2 and I said, this is really lacking, that area was so important to me that I gave it attention for the next month. So I took some actions. It was specifically about companionship with my sweetie. And so we had some dates. So then I scored it an 8. And so the measures change from month to month. And it's about the practice of looking at your life and looking at what you did in the last month and then looking at your aspirations for each area. So it is entirely subjective.
Sounds like the wheel, similar to like Wheel of Life, life satisfaction inventory, right? So then you can decide, okay, I'm a 2 in this area. Is this something I want to focus on?
Precisely.
Great. Questions?
Uh, just a quick one, Karen.
Go ahead, Simone.
Thank you. Rosie, it was a really wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the answer on measurement. And the reason I was asking that is oftentimes we use self-measurement, self-assessment rather. And then I was wondering what you thought about the gap where sometimes people tend to rate themselves based on how they believe they're doing or they perceive themselves versus what might actually be happening in real life. So I was curious to hear your take as you've collected all of this data from people and looked at the results.
So in the research study, we didn't actually ask them about the contents of their life. We asked them about their use of the tool and what they were experiencing in terms of shifts in perception. When you use the tool, so to say that a different way, people received a physical hard copy booklet, and this is where all their private information is. And then the surveys that they answered to NYU were all about the use of the tool, wasn't about the specifics of their life. So when you use the tool, there's a section here on step 2 where we have you go through your last month. So we literally say, open up your photos and scroll back to May 17th and open up your calendar and scroll back to May 17th. And now go week by week and write down what you did, who you spent time with, where you went. And then from there, we go through and you can see I've circled a bunch of things. Those are my highlights from that month. And then I have stars next to, we call them growth moments. It was challenging and difficult things. And this is the data that I then use to answer the question in the last month, how is this aspect of my life compared to how I'd like it to be? So that's always the question. How's this area of my life compared to how I'd like it to be? And you're using your recent experience.
Thank you. I love that because it actually has people really look back very practically and then answer those questions. Thank you for sharing that, Rosie.
Thanks, Simone. Would any of the Florist members who are here, anyone who was in the research study who's used TPFA, would you like to share what it's added to your life? I knew it was going to be you, Courtney. I knew it. Thank you for being willing.
I'm a very enthusiastic member of this community. I think it's I'm in a transition moment and part of a lot of different communities of care and support groups. And I think this one has provided the most practical grounding support in really structuring my life and structuring how I'm thinking about my life. I think it's important to have a lot of different support groups and networks, but being with a group that's really focused on a few questions and feeling like there's no ulterior motive. No one's trying to like sell me things or try to bring me into their, like I think I'm in LA and everyone's trying to sell me things. And I think I feel very um, skeptical of different communities. And I think this community feels really authentic and again focused on flourishing. And that's very helpful and very grounding. And I think the consistency is key.
I'd be happy to add something.
Is that Michael? Was that you, Michael? Are you there?
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
I think his phone might have dropped. Can you hear us, Michael? He's muting and unmuting. Michael, we'll
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
I'll say that the genius of this instrument, this is how focused it is. Life is too busy for too many of us these days. And it is a very easy way to look at key areas of your life. And I think that was organized extremely well. And the capacity is there in a very short amount of time to take a quick look at life, to look at your calendar or your photos, to see what's happening, and then to say, oh my goodness, I need to focus on something that matters to me that I've missed. And to do that, not in hours, but in a very short, in less than an hour. And it's amazing in how focused, how effective, and what a precision instrument it is. And I think that's, for me, one of the great geniuses of this approach. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Courtney. What other questions do folks
I
have?
would like to add something. This is Abba.
Hi, Alba.
Hi. I would say that I definitely agree with what both Courtney and Michael have said. And I will say that for me personally, when I looked at the assessment, it was a little overwhelming because I had not looked at my life in all those areas. And it kind of forced me to look at my life, the big picture. And the other day I was sharing the assessment with my friend and I was telling him how many areas of life that are. And he was like, what? I thought relationship, finance, and security, and that's it, and then we are done. And I said, no, there is a lot more to it, and it has. I 100% agree with what Courtney is saying about grounding. It is so grounding and makes, for me, every time I look at it, makes me feel like, okay, I have agency over what my life can look like. And that is, I think, very, very powerful for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rosie?
Thank you for spontaneously sharing. Oh my gosh, Maxine, hi.
Hi. One of the things, and I think this is part of there's a lot of brilliance to everything that Rosie's doing. One of the things that really hit me is that there's no judgment. That the intentionality behind what Rosie's doing is based, there's such a purity behind the intentionality that when you're working and doing this work, even when you're looking at things and you score low, you don't go into judgment. It doesn't shut you down. It does the opposite. It opens you up. It provides a space for reflection without judgment. And a lot of tools and a lot of things that people often do, it will have that element and it'll be hard to progress. There's just none of that energy in this work. So I really want to applaud you for that because it really has to do with where I believe you were at the inception of this work and what you've been able to carry through and pass on to others, just in the way you've presented everything and the way you show up for us on a regular basis.
Thank you, Maxine. That means a lot. Maxine, would you be willing to share which industry you work in?
Sure. I work in architecture and I work in engineering. So I'm in a very corporate environment and I also have a creative side as well. And so I also have an academic background, but I do work in a very heavy duty corporate environment.
And would you be willing to share just the category of creativity that you accessed through doing this? What's the thing you started doing?
Oh, yes. So, what I realized in doing the assessments is that my creative self as a writer, which had been such a high aspect of my life, when I was looking at it, I scored incredibly low. So, again, rather than going into judgment and poor me or why, as timing would have it, something opened up with a writing group. And so I've been writing now on a regular basis, and my writing is just flourishing by leaps and bounds, more than I really would have predicted. And I really owe it to that, to doing this work with Rosie and that moment in time when I looked at it and I went, how does something that has meant so much to me end up having so much of a backseat and being able to take action on it?
Thanks so much, Maxine.
You're welcome.
Courtney had a question. What makes a community, what do you think makes a community one where people actually flourish? And which of those elements matter most to nurture in this project and movement? Amazing question. Okay, so there are some aspects of a person's life that are more fundamental than others. Basic needs is the most fundamental. And we have organized those. I would say the secondary is not secondary. So that's why the first domain that we measure on the tool is health. And for those who are not familiar with the tool, the three aspects under health are spiritual health, mental health, physical health. And we have different ways that we think about the criteria that go into those and the practices. Like we say, think about the quality and quantity of what you're doing in each area. And we always say flourishing is subjective. It's wholly subjective. No one can teach you about your exact flavor of flourishing. And so the things that are good for your mental health are likely going to be things like getting enough sleep, likely going to be things like getting enough water, eating nutritiously. But then for you, it might be, I like to meditate every day, or I like to pray every day, or I like to go to church once a week, or I like to go walk in nature 3 times a week. So it's going to be different for each person. And in terms of getting back to your question, Courtney, what makes a community one where people actually flourish together? It's people being on the journey together who are willing to do the work. And they're what I'm experiencing in myself as I do the work, and I do the work every single day. What I'm experiencing is more grace, less impatience, less judgment, anger, fewer triggers. I get shot between the eyes like that cartoon, less and less. Still happens, of course, but it's less and less. And so being around people who are willing to be responsible for their own flourishing, okay, and then being willing to work it out when conflict happens with each other. If most people in a community are working on their flourishing, then that means they're expanding their consciousness. That means that they're gaining skills for having more wisdom and how to be with people and live with people, work with people. There are behaviors that I used to do even just a few years ago that I don't do anymore because it goes against my flourishing. So I think that's really it. That's the main thing, is be around people who are on the path. And if you're around a bunch of people who are not, then maybe that's no longer the right group for you. Maybe that's a group that you have outgrown and your journey's going in a different direction.
I would love to just reinforce this notion of the power of working on it alongside others, like this term of accompaniment, that is how we will flourish. We flourish in community and we do not flourish alone. So it's not only community or cohort-based flourishing will amplify and accelerate it. I think it's absolutely necessary.
100%. Simone asked, is it designed purely as an assessment or a development tool as well as their guidance on flourishing practices? So we intentionally, when we guide this in Floris, we say this. So my partner, David, he is an executive leadership coach, but when we are in the Floris space together, we say this is not a coaching space. And we make an agreement to not give advice, unsolicited advice to each other. And when David and I are guiding the tool, we say we're here as peers. So it's peers guiding peers through this tool. The So we don't give guidance on flourishing practices unless somebody asks. But we do. I like to host things like we did an Ask Me Anything online a few months ago in April with Scott Barry Kaufman. And so Scott, as a psychologist and a neuroscientist, was able to bring lots of information about research-backed practices. And then I would share about my own like practical experience in flourishing. And so I'm happy that's on the YouTube channel at Human Flourishing. Anyone else? Jeff, what's alive for you?
Line I put in the chat, it aligns very well with the writing I've been doing lately about owning our own flourishing, because my focus has been on this notion that we're solving for external validation, that we're solving for approval, and that mountain is very hard to overcome. And there is even more adversity when we try to take it in our own hands than when we're trying to please the people around us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Every time I've met someone who is really struggling and viewing the world as like the world's problems as intractable and feeling that weight on their shoulders, that burden on their shoulders, every person that I talk to inevitably reveals to me that they're struggling with depression in their own life, that they're not taking care of themselves, that they're having a hard time in their own personal life. And I have been there. I have been there, and it's been by making the choice to work on my flourishing every single day that I have shifted from this is a systemic problem that money in my life is not working, or that I feel this way about the world. I've shifted it from focus out there, which has me in a place of victim mentality. And what this tool has given us is access to agency of I can control my actions today and what I can do right here in my life. As a result, money starts flowing. As a result, my relationships work better. As a result, I'm healthier. I work out more. And so I have really found that flourishing, and like what's so cool about that is then I'm juiced up and I have more to give for my contribution to the world. And so I've shifted the focus from being out there trying to save the world to have my life work for me, be in integrity, parent myself. That's number one. I think that that's the biggest access to flourishing is to be a mature adult. I have to learn to parent myself, be a grown up, and make sure all my life is taken care of and cleaned up. And so as a result, things work. And then here we are talking to the Harvard Flourishing Network's Flourishing at Work group. Like it's really it's so impactful turning that, the metaphor where you're pointing the finger, there's one finger going that way and then there's three coming back here. And so like put the attention here to do the work of transforming the world. That's what we say to people who use our tool is by showing up 40 minutes a month and doing this tool, you are actually transforming the world. Well, I have some invitations. My contact information is rosie@vonlila.com. Reach out. Would love to hear from you. If you would like to be added to my email list, you can either email me or pop your name in the chat. YouTube channel is at Human Flourishing. We'll be posting content starting in the next few months. And we're looking for an institutional partner for the timeline on human flourishing. When the work is done, it's going to be over 100 feet long, and we're going to want to exhibit it. And so we need people with big buildings to be able to exhibit that kind of thing. I'm also looking for volunteers who'd like to contribute. The way that we created the list of what's on the timeline is based on volunteers and interns. And so I'd love to talk through, if you have an expertise in a particular part of history, let me know. And you want to chat a little bit, because I'm not an expert on those 189 people who are on that timeline. But each of us can contribute a little something, and having access to the fact that we're part of a lineage that is thousands of years old, of people asking, what does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to flourish? What does it mean to live well with each other? Like, that's continuity. And it also connects us to the fact that there's going to be people who come after us. And so what a great reason to do the work. Last thing, I'm going to that conference in Georgia in September. If you want to do a delegation, let me know, and we can go have a nice time and go to a Flourishing Summit. And I think those are all my notes.
Do you remember, when is the conference, Rosie? Do you remember?
I think it's September 9. No,
Okay.
it might be September 3rd. I can actually properly answer this. Hold on one second.
I'll put all the information that you shared and Rosie's contact info and whatnot in the follow-up email. So if anybody wants to get in touch, I will do that.
I'm pretty sure it's September 3rd.
Okay.
It's a one-day thing.
Great. Great. I appreciate that you've designed this either, hopefully, I'm sure purposefully, but with some very like key psychological principles in place. Looking at the varying elements of health and well-being and community and agency. And we know we change with follow-up. So all of that scaffolding seems to be very psychologically robust.
That means a lot. Thank you, Karen.
I'm also going to throw this funny video. It's called Stuck on an Escalator. If it doesn't work, just you can search it. I don't know if anybody has seen it, but it's like the personification of victim mindset. I used to make my kids watch this every year, and it's only like a minute and a half, and I promise it'll be worth your 90 seconds, but I used to make my kids watch it so that we had language to talk about, like, I failed the math test and my teacher is stupid, versus like, oh, the math test was hard. Perhaps I could have studied more. Like, is this an escalator problem or is this a you problem? So it's like, take the topic seriously without taking ourselves too seriously. So I threw that in the chat. Thank you, Rosie. This was delightful. And I look forward to seeing your YouTube videos. I'm going to check out the Scott Barry Kaufman one. That sounds fascinating. Are there any more questions? A couple of announcements. Chase, are you able to go off mute?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello. So you have a well-being think tank meeting today, correct?
We do have a meeting today. Yeah.
Okay.
So
do you want to do a little plug for that?
yeah, sure. So Wellbeing Think Tank is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And every quarter we dive deep into a theme. And our theme this quarter was applying art and play for human flourishing. So we had Dr. Tasha Golden, who wrote Arts on Prescription. We had Dr. Mike Rucker, an IO psychologist, who wrote the book The Fun Habit. So we dove into those already. So we look at it through the organizational level, the individual level, and then today is our think tank meeting where we get together and really kind of talk about it as practitioners. So how do we use these tools in the workplace? And then after, we produce a ton of content. So that'll be out in a couple weeks probably. And next quarter, we're diving into data. We have Susan Peters from the Harvard, who's done the Thriving at Work Index. And then Q4, we have some creative pathways to well-being. So we're all about well-being in the workplace. How do we apply it in the workplace from the workplace and the workforce side? But thank you.
Chase, where can we see the past content and the upcoming content?
Our community membership is free. And so community members can attend our events live. Our paid members get access to our whole library. We have a lot of resources on our blog. And then inside the community portal, there are some community resources, but that's one of our pathways to sustainability is for our supporting members as well. So some things are behind there, but yeah.
Wellbeing.org. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate you.
I just put the link in the chat.
Oh, great.
And Eleanor or Jeff, do either of you have any announcements you want to make?
Not at this time. Thank you,
Okay.
though.
I can make one. I'm Eleanor. I have a company called the Flourishing Work Alliance. So we work about flourishing in the workplace. And I have a couple things that I do. I did a forum in April, a get together. I'm in Denver, and we had about 40 people. It was all about flourishing at work. So we also have Flourishing Work Index, and I have a framework for flourishing organizations. And I'm currently building a cohort for the Certified Flourishing Executive Program that I do. I did one last year, and I'm doing one this year. It's virtual, totally. It starts in September, and it goes for 7 months and meets once a month in a full cohort, and then once a month in a small group. So if this is really focused on C-suite executives and board members to bring flourishing into the organizations, but starting with themselves, so their own flourishing. So if anyone might be interested, I'll pop a link in the chat about that.
Yes,
Thanks, Karen.
please do. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'll post the recording on our YouTube channel, which I think we have maybe 4 followers. So haven't really marketed it, but it is there.
What is the YouTube channel?
It's Human Flourishing. Actually, I can't even remember. Harvard Human Flourishing. I guess I should know that. Flourishing at Work. No wonder nobody knows where to find it. I don't even know where to find it.
Perfect.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Karen.
Today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. This is great.
welcome. Bye.
Thank you.